Well, hello and welcome to another in the A3 Management Consulting webinars. Today we are dealing with the topic of digitalization in the energy sector. My name is Matt Brown. I am Vice President in the Management Consulting division of A3. I look after the energy part and welcome. Great to have you. Great to have you join us. I'm joined. If you can flick on a couple of slides, Mikael. I'm joined by my colleague, Mikael Maasalo. Who, Mikael, I don't know if you want to just say hello and
Hello,
introduce
hello.
yourself.
Yeah, I'm
Mikael's
Mikael.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm Mikael Maasalo, and I'm based in Finland and part of the operational services business unit. And then I'm heading this kind of team that concentrates on digital solutions and then operational excellence projects.
Thank you. So on to the next slide. Just to say, we have a load of questions that we got on registration, and please ask questions throughout the webinar itself. We will endeavor to answer all of those, maybe not at the end of the webinar, but we will follow up with people and answer questions after the webinar, so please do that. The slide pack and a recording of the webinar will be emailed to all attendees and then also put on the website. So don't worry too much about trying to take notes or anything. The pack will be there. With that, I will, I think, just hand it over to Mikael, and please take us through the details, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A at the end if we have time.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Matt. So as you said, the topic is digitalization in the energy sector, and then we are basically looking at what experiences and real life kind of evidence we've got through our projects that we've been doing recently, and then kind of look at the overall trends in the digitalization. So key topics, we're looking at the impact of digitalization on energy companies' operations, what's going on there, and then how to assess digital readiness and maturity of energy companies' operations, and then a couple of real life cases where we see tangible value that could be improved. So these are the kind of key questions I try to address during the next 30 minutes or so. So first of all, impact of digitalization. And this whole question of digitalization is quite interesting because it people started to talk about it a few years ago, and then at least I was a bit puzzled by this kind of by this, that everybody was talking about digitalization. I remember I was teaching at the university 20 years ago already, digital control and all these kind of basic algorithms. And I didn't think there was nothing new in digitalization. And I tried to understand what on earth is going on, and why all this fuss about this concept. And I guess what has happened, this is probably something that most of you are familiar, but just to go through this kind of basic concept of digitalization. So what has happened is that the cost of IT has basically collapsed in three areas. So connectivity. Earlier times we didn't have data. It was very difficult to get data measurements in place, and also connectivity between the systems and so on. Now we have mobile phone, the kind of these networks and so on. Then also data storage used to be very expensive, and now these days you get gigabytes on your mobile phone, and then obviously this kind of cloud storage is it's almost negligible, the cost. And then the last area, computational power and capacity, that has also the cost of computational power has basically also collapsed. So where we previously we had complex algorithms that were difficult to run. Now you don't need much. You can run complicated algorithms on your mobile phone basically. And then when we have this kind of phenomenon, then it's extremely cost effective to do digital development. So especially when earlier times you had an idea of doing a new tool or solution, you had to start up a big and long project. These days, you basically, when you have a new idea, you get a couple of hooded guys and they work for a couple of days, and you have these amazing 3D models and so on. So it's basically become extremely kind of quick and effective and providing opportunities. And then the kind of overall uh, picture, the impact and opportunities of digitalization. So there are two areas once again. So first of all, we can make existing processes more efficient, meaning that we have an existing company, existing operations, and then we basically do exactly what we used to do earlier, but then we can actually do things more effectively with less people involved and requiring less resources, and then also improve cost efficiency. And then on the other hand, we have this concept of creative disruption, where suddenly we have completely new business models, and then these old ways of doing business disappear. So and in the way of we have Airbnbs and Ubers and so on. But I guess where I come from, I'm an expert on operational excellence, so been working a lot on the operational effectiveness with energy companies. There, the kind of link to digitalization is that where we spotted opportunities for effectiveness improvement, there's a lot of overlap with digital solutions. So when we want to find actually tangible value, then these kind of value gaps can quite often be filled with new digital solutions. And then interestingly, digitalization as a phenomenon, it really changes all industries, and there are the effects and impacts. They vary between the industries, and this is an old picture that was produced by Deloitte, but I think it's a good one, showing that different industries are at different stages. So what we can see is that media is probably already through this kind of disruptive wave of digitalization. So they were making a lot of noise a few years ago. They were having huge troubles with their kind of print medias, and today they've come up with complete new stable operating models and sustainable new business. But then on the energy side, I guess we've been trailing behind, and but then I would say that a lot has happened over the last few years, and then there was a lot of confusion when this started. So there was a lot of pressure coming from the outside that, well, other industries are digitalizing themselves, so please go ahead and do something about this. So digitalize yourself, and then kind of the question was there how to do it. But now there are pretty solid approaches. A few years ago, I was actually talking to one Nordic company, and they basically, their local business, and they had got a message from the headquarters: you really need to start working on this topic. And they were quite confused that, we're quite happy with what is going on, but I guess we need to do something. But then if we are looking at this kind of big picture, the kind of, I would say that the big corporations, they in general, they have pretty solid digital strategies. They know what to do. They have internal organizations, and and a lot of activities going on, accelerator programs, and like Enel, they have Next and so on. So a clear path forward. But then where we see a lot more opportunity is mid-sized and small energy companies, because they obviously they lack the resources and quite often. But all in all, how to then approach this topic? There we have two concepts, so digital readiness and digital maturity. And I guess when we have an energy company, and then the question is, well, what should we do? I've been working with quite a few companies that work within this field here in Finland, but also globally, and they've been helping out companies with their digitalization strategies. And then one of the concepts that comes through is this kind of concept of open innovation, because companies and corporations, they tend to be quite stiff. They are running silos. Their managers are extremely capable of doing what they do, but they are quite often a bit stuck to their own ways of doing work. And then the question is that, well, why would you do things differently if you are profitable? Where does the momentum come? But then interestingly, if you need to make change happen, you need a certain kind of attitude that breaks free of these silos. And what we've seen is that there's quite often there's a lot of let's say ambition and ideas within the organization. So employees, quite often they have a lot of ideas, but then this kind of basic setup of an organization really kind of holds back this kind of innovation. So you should basically unleash the potential, and then when people, they are working on their kind of processes and doing their daily work, they have a lot of ideas, and you just need to somehow unleash this potential and basically embrace this kind of open innovation. So you basically need to promote an information age mindset toward innovation that runs counter to the secrecy and silo mentality of traditional corporate research labs. And then typically, in order to make this happen, big corporations, they have a special team that is tasked with digital development, and they typically need to have a special manager who understands that innovative people, they are different. You can't do this kind of corporate kind of extremely bureaucratic heavy development if you want to get results done. And then this kind of startup culture is quite important. And then also you need to have certain kind of partners for digital development, and then even to search for startups. And quite often corporations have set up these accelerator programs. Even here within AFRY, we have one where we are accelerating ideas. And I guess when we come to the topic of digital readiness, this is something we've been working on, assessing our client companies, the kind of readiness. We have 4 attributes to readiness. So basically strategy and structure. Does the company have a digitalization strategy? Is the organization set up in such a way that it supports digitalization? On the customer front, it's quite interesting and important. Is digitalization used to enhance customer experience? Does the company add value, or do they try to add value to existing services through digitalization? And are they actually thinking differently, so trying to develop new products and services outside traditional business? Then at the same time, the question about organizational readiness: does this kind of organizational structure kind of make it possible for the employees then to come up with ideas and to actually find these opportunities and then prototype them and really develop them into new tools and services? And then also systems and technical readiness. Does this current landscape of systems and tools support this kind of new development? And then do you actually collaborate with kind of partners that would enable this kind of development work? And this is basically digital readiness is a key factor to how well this kind of digital transformation takes place. And there are certain areas where you can create a roadmap and follow it clearly, and then kind of make it possible for innovation to happen. But then there is this topic of digital maturity. This is something that we've also been working on. So when we've been looking at companies, especially here in the Nordics, we've been looking at generation companies, CHP companies, Finland, Sweden, Central Europe, and there the idea is that we've been assessing the digital maturity. So we have this best-in-class model of digital tools that are already in place, and then we can actually go through the whole value chain from inputs, so procurement, through operation, maintenance, and then business control and business intelligence, IT and systems, and see what opportunities the companies already kind of, what tools they have in place, and where are these kind of low-hanging fruits for new digital cases. So not particularly scientific work, but very interesting, this kind of quick and dirty way to understand what is the kind of maturity of the company, and then how to move forward effectively. But then, as the topic of the presentation was, how to uncover hidden value in the operations, and especially in the data. And then we've been doing quite a lot of work within this area from this kind of AFRY specific angle. So we are not an IT company as such. We are a consulting and engineering company, and then where we think that our kind of specific differentiator is, when we kind of look at ourselves against other companies that are working in the field, is that we have very strong management consulting side of the business. So we understand the kind of business drivers, and especially the kind of financial performance of the company. But then also we have extremely competent technical experts. So we really understand also the nuts and bolts about the kind of business processes. So what goes on in the field. So what we've been working on very closely is linking these two sides. So looking into what happens in the field, what is going there in the business processes, and then how does this link to money and business performance. And then this is something that we've been looking into. And then this is a real case example. So a district heating company, a business which has a fairly typical situation. So they basically common typical problem that they have a lot of data, a lot of system stores. They have smart meters and collecting a lot of data. But then the question was that, well, when we have all this data, what on earth can we do with it? How do we create value with it? And then we actually made a diagnostic project. So we collected a lot of data, and then looked at how the company is running their assets hour by hour. We had a team of IT specialists, technical experts, and then consultants, and then we calculated basically their current revenue is 22 million. They could actually, if they were aware of how they run the assets all the time throughout the year, and they all running their assets in an optimal way all the time, they could actually increase their EBITDA so that it kind of corresponds to 5% of total revenue of the business, in excess of 4%. And quite an interesting result, because big financial impact. And then what we did, we then basically created um, algorithms and calculated this online, this optimal way of operating the assets each and every hour, and basically created a display where we have certain signals that have a clear effect on the company business profitability, and then calculate online how they should actually operate the assets. And then we can see immediately when they start wasting energy, and then we are showing it to the operators. So the operator and the managers as well, they get this kind of red signal immediately if they are off from the kind of optimum point, and then we can see it on the timeline if they basically how well they've been doing. And then we are also calculating online the value of this wasted amount of energy. And then the point is that then this information helps the operators and the management then to really kind of understand what is the optimum point. And one of the key things what we've noticed is that very often you have employees who are extremely motivated, they want to do their best, but they simply not aware of what would be the right kind of ways of how do you actually do the best work you could, how do you optimize the operations. So here the key point is that if you provide the staff with this information, and especially the kind of so that they understand what is the value of their actions, it should lead to better performance. And interestingly, we are also giving them marks with regards to each and every KPI every day. So after when the operators go home, they get this kind of feedback on the kind of performance immediately. And then what we could see is that the performance started getting better day by day when they got this feedback. And then what we've been seeing is that also the business profitability has been improved. So the financial or the business controllers have been reporting that there's something now going on. You are doing something because the numbers are getting better. And this is an interesting example. We have been doing quite a few of projects like this, looking into the data, understanding where the potential is, and it is quite consistent. So and as a general rule, when you have the more complex assets you have and the more complexity you have in the assets, the more potential there is. But it's quite uniform. So here I'm talking about CHP assets and district heating networks, but then also we've seen the same in wind and solar. So the better you measure the asset operations and better you're able to show it and link it to the business performance, the better you do this kind of data analysis, the better results you get. So yeah, so this is an example of how you can actually utilize data and make use of it. Then we have another real life case example. So best in class operating model, and this is also an example of, I would say, digitalization in general. So we've been looking at the operating models, and here especially one of the key questions is that how many employees do you need to run a district heating company? And here we've been using this kind of benchmark, which is FTEs per 100 gigawatt hours of heat delivered to customers. And there we can see that, especially in the Nordics, Baltic, Central European privately owned district heating companies, where there is this kind of cost pressure, they've been able to optimize their or kind of improve the performance. But then I actually don't have the best in class benchmark figure here, so it's even lower than these best ones that I've shown here. But what we've seen is that the difference is quite notable between this best performance and these kind of companies that are trailing behind. And then when we've done this kind of works, we have several projects ongoing where we then help the companies to improve the operating model, and it's not straightforward work. So you basically you need to concentrate on several areas. So you first of all you need to develop the actual business processes, the operational processes, how you set up the actual business process of running operations, maintenance process, and especially the management system, so that the operators and managers, they have a very clear and transparent view into the business performance, and then and be able to give proper targets and steer the operations. Then also what we've seen is that the best in class companies, they've been able to increase automation level. So it's quite important that you improve automation level, and there are a lot of these kind of best in class solutions that minimize the involvement of operators that are required. Then also we need to implement best in class digital tools in order to improve business performance. And then one of the most interesting topics is utilizing remote process control. And this is the topic that is really trending in the Nordics. If you're looking at district heating companies, they in Finland, in Sweden, also in Central Europe, we have a lot of different small and mid-sized companies. So for example, in Finland we have 80 companies, and they all have their control rooms from where they run their assets, and obviously you need all these kind of people to run the operations. And now when we're looking at the kind of situation, what has happened in the field of automation is that this kind of local presence, it is not anymore required, even with big power plants, so CHP plants or power plants. You don't need local presence, so people doing that kind of process supervision. So what we see is that, especially as a case in Finland, is that if we have, say, 80 control rooms scattered across the whole of country, in few years' time we probably have 5, 6, 7 control rooms that are providing this as a service to other companies, because it's such a powerful way of organizing the business. And then in general, when we've been talking with management of energy companies, is that if you don't have a roadmap to move from this kind of localized supervision to this kind of remote supervision, you should actually have a plan in place, because it will happen within few years. So so that's actually one of the key ways to optimize FTEs. But then at the same time, what I would say is that also when you have centralized control room, you can also develop the kind of concept of doing this kind of remote supervision, so that you actually start doing performance management at the same time. So this is also one of the angles that is currently still missing from these kind of. But then looking at this kind of best in class operating model, there's a lot of opportunity, and I would say that interestingly, when we are looking at this big picture, huge potential from the asset management point of view, so how assets are being run, and then what are the FTE figures doing this work. And then I guess based on what what we've seen recently is that this is, as a phenomenon, it's quite uniform. So it's not restricted to only to district heating companies, CHP companies, but then it's applicable also to other industries. So if we are talking about wind, solar, we see the same thing, that for example, wind assets, you should have a very strong operational center from where you run these operations, and then use the best in class digital tools. Okay, spent 30 minutes on this on this topic. I could obviously spend quite a quite a while talking about this kind of issues, but I guess these webinars are about giving this kind of quick overview of what we've been working on and what our view is. But then basically, if I summarize our key messages, is that what I was saying in the beginning is that energy industry has been fairly slow to embrace these opportunities, but then the bigger corporations, they pretty much on the track, they know what they are doing, a lot of stuff is happening, but then small and mid-sized companies still a lot of confusion, but then also a lot of opportunities still, especially within small and mid-sized companies, but then also the large companies are still in the process of harnessing this potential. And then at the same time, digital maturity varies a lot, and then what we've also seen is that operational data is not consistently utilized across the industry to optimize asset operations all the time. Typically, still most of the companies within energy industry are still looking at monthly reports, and what happens in the daily operations is still remains unnoticed. And then what I was talking about during the last case is the operating model efficiency. Also a lot of variance, a lot of room for improvement through digitalization, and then optimizing the business performance and then operational performance. Okay, thank you for listening.
Great, thanks, Mikael. If you could just pop on to the next slide. I think there's one more with your contact details there. I think what's really interesting to me is the complete mix here in this area. We talk about digital, about the IT part, but at the same time, it's a very human question as well, getting people ready for change and willing to change, to accept new ways of working. So I think across all of these areas, it's a fascinating topic. I think because we've gone over slightly, I won't do any question and answer now, but as I said, we will follow up after the webinar with those people who've posed some questions. And next week we have another webinar, and this one is about climate policy, energy, and reporting of the positions on energy companies. So please join us for that one. I think it'll be very interesting, and I'd like to say thank you to Mikael again. Thank you to Bev and Johnny who helped us put these on, and thanks to everyone who's been attending and listening. We'll leave it there. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.